Hello everyone, my name is Droogie4Ever, and today we have a short story. And it's not just any short story. This is a short story that I wrote in 2012, so it's 6 years ago now. I tried to get it published several times, and it never got published. But I thought I would share it with you now, and I thought I would read it for you. And of course, I'm going to have the text up on the screen so that you can read along. But yeah, I thought we'd just try something different. I wish that I could draw so that we could have done some pictures and maybe I could have just narrated that for you. But yeah, hopefully this will be okay. I haven't seen anybody do this because it's like really low budget without just reading words on a page. But it's something I wanted to share. I didn't want to have to put it up on like Amazon for money. So I thought we'd do a video of it and just narrate it, and you can read along if you want. So yeah, anyway. This used to be a nice neighborhood, back when everything hadn't changed, back when things weren't as crazy as they are now. I guess I know where everything went wrong, and now we just kind of have to live with the consequences, but it really is sad that it all turned out this way. Tanya and I didn't even know the person who screwed up, but that's what happens when someone makes the biggest mistake the world has ever seen. Everyone in the world suffers because of it. It was probably just a long line of people who continued to pass down the knowledge from the first guy who screwed it up, but that doesn't change the fact that it all got so far away from the truth, really, was that many people suffered because of it, Tanya and I included. And now that I'm reading that out loud, but that doesn't change the fact that it all got so far away from what the truth really was that many people... Okay, I need to put some kind of... like a comma or something there. What the truth really was that many people suffered because of it, Tanya and I included. Sorry for that. It bugged me. I need to put a comma or something in there. All right. I used to sit on the porch and listen to the sounds of the birds chirping in the trees. The wind would blow ever so slightly on nice clear days, and it really seemed that life here was perfect, like a dream, you know? We have a porch swing that's kind of a cliche in small towns like the one we chose to build our home in, but it suits me just the same, and the cliche doesn't bother me a bit. I do miss all of those things, the birds, the trees, the wind, and the swing, but I just can't bring myself to go outside much anymore, and I know it makes Tanya feel better if I don't. When everything first happened, I still went outside a lot. So did Tanya, for that matter. We decided we would need supplies, and we would need to put more work into the garden, so that's what we did. We went to every supermarket in the area and filled up 2 buggies full of stuff at each one. I don't really think that anyone got the stuff they really wanted, but everyone got as much as they could because we all knew that we would need every last can of beans, every last bag of rice, every gardening tool, and every seed we could get our hands on. Not as many people panicked as you might think. Usually when crazy things happen, you see on the news that people got trampled to death at some superstore because they were running out of kerosene and water and people got freaked out. And when you have a crowd that size, things get out of control, but that really didn't happen here. I think everyone had just accepted that there really wasn't much we could do. To be honest, I think that most people thought the supplies wouldn't even help, and who could blame them? I know I never thought Tanya and I would make it this long, although I would never have told her so. You've got to have hope at times like this, and I never would have dared take that away from her when we've already lost so much. The funny thing about all this is I really don't see how someone could have made this big of a mistake. What I mean is, how did so much information get lost in translation? If you really think about it, there's only so many ways to interpret the information, and maybe it's just me, but I don't see how someone could have screwed it up this bad. All our lives, billions of us thought a certain way, because it's what we were taught, and it's what we and everyone around us knew as the God's honest truth. But now, how do you live with the realization that it was that wrong? I suppose that eventually things will all work out for the best. After all, it's been 6 years already, and we just have to make it through one more. Sometimes it's hard to believe we've survived here for 6 years, but I guess we've done all right with what we had. We knew lots of people who were taken. Many of our friends, family, and even neighbors got to go when they came. Tanya and I were forced to stay, and I'm sure some people in each of our families had to stay too, but I'd be surprised if many of them survived the last 6 years. We lost so many things when they came that sometimes I forget just how connected every single person was to everyone else on the planet. I miss the internet a lot, and Tanya misses talking on the phone, but we've lived for so long without those things that I'm starting to wonder if anyone ever really needed them. In the last 6 years, Tanya and I have grown much closer than we ever were before, and for that I'm thankful. If they had never shown up, who knows if Tanya and I would even still be married. The year leading up to the coming was a rough one for us. We've been married for 23 years now, so I guess we would have been married for about 15 when our marital problems started. Tanya had just started to go through menopause, and our sex life was going down the tubes, so when the opportunity came along to have an affair, I took it. I felt really bad about it afterwards. Not that it makes a difference now, because I know she loves and forgives me, but she figured it all out pretty quick, and for a while there I actually thought she was going to divorce me. When she calmed down enough to talk to me, we decided that part of the problem was that we really didn't talk anymore. Once she explained to me about how the menopause was making her feel and what it was doing to her body, I felt pretty bad about abandoning her physically as well as mentally. We both decided that we would give it another shot, and if it didn't work, then we could talk about divorce. By that time, a few months had passed, and her symptoms were starting to abate a little. Our love life picked back up, and we talked more than ever. The second half of that year was a lot better than the first half, and for the first time in our entire marriage, I felt like we had really become best friends. Compared to the way we are now, we really didn't know each other at all back then, but we thought we did. I can honestly say that the best thing about all that's happened is how close Tanya and I have become. Our house used to be surrounded by a little white picket fence that was even more of a cliche than the swing on the porch, but it was the kind of thing that Tanya had always dreamed of, and during the second half of that year, I decided that the fence was something I could do myself. It took 3 months, but I finally finished the fence just in time for the coming. I didn't know that the coming was coming, but looking back on it, I realized that it was just over a week later when our lives changed forever. I remember it like it was yesterday. After all, who could forget the biggest thing that had ever happened in the history of the world? Kennedy's assassination, Lincoln's assassination, Teddy Roosevelt's speech, 9/11, John Lennon's death, Woodstock, the moon landing. These things all paled in comparison with the coming. We all used to say, I can remember exactly where I was when JFK was shot, or I was afraid of terrorists for 6 months after 9/11, or I cried when we landed on the moon, but I doubt if many people even remember those things anymore. I can't remember where I was or what I was doing when those things happened. The only thing I remember, the only thing that really sticks anymore in the back of my mind, is where I was and what I was doing during the coming. Because I had just finished the aforementioned cliché fence, I was now in the process of turning our backyard into a garden for my loving wife. I went to the rental place on Monday and rented a rototiller. I had never used one before, but the guy at the store gave me some useful information, so when I got home, I just jumped right in the fire. I've always kind of been that way with one thing or another. I like to know a little bit about everything, and that philosophy has served me well in my time. It took most of the rest of the day, but I tilled almost the entire backyard. I wasn't really going to turn the whole backyard into a garden, but once I got started, I figured, why go small when we can go big? There was no way I could possibly know that I should have gone even bigger, much bigger in fact. The funny thing is that now, not only is our entire backyard a garden, but we've got multiple plants in every window, and the inside of our house is kind of like a miniature greenhouse. The ceiling isn't clear glass, of course, but we've done this out of necessity. It's not as if we can just go on down to the supermarket anymore, now can we? The inside plants are on a standing rotation schedule that Tanya and I keep up with vigorously. We have to make sure that all of the plants get some sunlight, so we rotate them daily. 2 or even 3 times a day we rotate plants so that they each get some sunlight. It's kind of a hassle, but we learned long ago that we had to do it to survive, so that's what we do, even when we don't feel like it. Looking out the window, it's sad to think about all the work I put into the little white fence now that we have this ugly monstrosity surrounding the house. After the coming, I used all of the extra wood I had to build this thing, and it looks like patchwork because it is. I used every unused piece of wood I had just to make sure we had at least something protecting us from the outside. Tanya and I are thankful every single day that we remodeled that old well out back when we bought this place. Without the well, we would have been dead long ago, and I don't think we'll survive for very long if it ever goes dry. We have some water stored up in the basement, but it takes so long to disinfect it that we don't have nearly as much as I wish we did. That old fireplace is still going strong, and I suspect that it'll still be in good shape a year from now, so I think that's one thing I don't really have to worry about. We have a lot more wood than water in the basement, although I wish we had more. It's hard to chop down a tree and cut it up when you're terrified for your life the entire time, and I don't have fuel for the chainsaw anymore, so I have to do it all by hand with an axe, which takes a lot longer than you might think. I used to like chopping wood, but now it's too dangerous for my tastes, and even though I still have plenty of ammunition, I would never want to use it to do harm to another human being. That's the world that we live in now, though, and it saddens me every time I think about it. I used to work for a company that made windmills, and because of that, I learned how to go off the grid, so to speak, as far as supplying power to my own house. The windmill isn't one of those incredible monstrosities that everyone has seen at one point or another in their lives. It's just a little guy by comparison, and it gives us little guy juice in return. It's not like the whole house is lit up like the 4th of July while everyone else in town is in the dark. That would be too conspicuous. No, the windmill provides power to one of the 3 circuit breaker boxes in the basement, and I've managed to rewire parts of the house so that only the necessities are being used in that box. Unfortunately, there's only so much power to go around, so with only one 21 breaker, 220 breaker available, we had to decide what was more important, the oven or the dryer. We picked the oven. Of course, there's plenty of regular sockets around the house that have power, so Tanya still uses her blow dryer or the curling iron once in a while, which is really a waste of energy, but I have to let her have her moments. Without those small pieces of normalcy and shared moments that remind us of a time before, we'd both have gone crazy by now with the monotony of it all. I remember what we were going to do with the garden before the coming. After I finished tilling the ground, we bought all kinds of mulch and plants. Some were edible, but Tanya picked out lots of pretty flowers too. Looking at the garden now, you can't even tell that it was supposed to be this beautiful place of calm serenity. Every available inch of space is now used to grow only edible plants and healing herbs. Sometimes I wish that the coming hadn't happened, but then we'd all still just be living the lie, and I'm not sure which is worse. Knowing what the truth is but not believing it, or not knowing what the truth is but believing the lie. Tanya and I believed the lie our entire lives, and when the coming happened, we were just as stunned as everyone else who was left behind. I'm not exactly sure how the infrastructure fell apart because it all happened so suddenly that we were just instantly cut off from the rest of the world. You'd think with millions or even billions of people still left behind that everything would have just run as smooth as could be, but I guess the truth shook everyone up so bad that everything just kind of fell apart. I'm proud to say that our little town didn't turn into total anarchy, but I'm sure as can be that most towns and cities weren't so lucky. Maybe in another year Tanya and I will get some brownie points for not descending into madness while they were gone. I haven't been to town in a while because the main reason to go to town is to get food or supplies. The last time I was there sure wasn't any food to be had, and anyway, money's not worth anything anymore. I guess the last time I went was probably around 5.5 years ago. Has it really been that long? Wow, I guess it's been a while since I thought about it. I do know that I decided not to go back more because of the way people were acting than because of the lack of anything to buy or trade. As I walked down the empty streets, I felt like people were watching me. I'd turn around or turn toward a house, and although I never actually saw a person, I'd see a brief glimpse of a shadow, or I'd see a curtain closing in a window. People were afraid to go outside, and who could blame them? Our town may not have descended into chaos, but maybe the rest of the world did. What if the crazies decided to descend upon our little town? Going outside wasn't worth the risk anymore, apparently. The church on Main Street, which used to be a perfectly normal place to worship God, was the most striking reminder of how much things had changed in just 6 months. I walked past it on a fruitless mission to find 5 gallons of gasoline when I noticed the sign out front had been changed. It used to say, "God has saved a place for us all in heaven," but as I walked past the sign that day, I did a double take when I saw what it said now. "In 7 years they will return. We will rejoice." I decided to walk inside and have a conversation with the pastor. I know that it wasn't a Sunday because the church was empty when I walked inside, not a soul in sight. The church still looked similar to the way I remembered it. The statue of Jesus was gone, and the glass window with a picture of the Virgin Mary was broken, but other than that, it was the same. I walked down the aisle and made my way to the back office where the pastor used to be when he wasn't preaching. I hesitated for a moment, but then decided that I would knock first before entering. As soon as I knocked, someone responded and told me I could open the door, so I went in to find the same old pastor that had been there as long as I could remember. He had a lot less hair, and more of it was gray than I remembered, but he was definitely the same man. His face was red, as though he had either overexerted himself, or maybe he had just been crying. I guess I'll probably never know, but he greeted me warmly with an outstretched hand. I shook it, and he beckoned me to have a seat in front of him. "What can I do for you today, Michael?" he asked politely as I sat down and studied the bookcase behind him. "Well, I noticed you changed the sign outside, and since I've really only talked to Tanya about this, I decided to come and ask what you thought about what's happened." Sorry, guys. The pastor ran a hand through his hair and then folded his hands together on the desk in front of me. "I'm not really sure of anything anymore, Michael. For all I know, it's a load of malarkey, but I'm doing the best I can with what I got to work with, and I think that this time I might have figured it out. I mean, you can imagine what the coming has done for people like me. Everyone started to question me and ask me what it meant and how we could be sure what was happening and what could happen, and I just wasn't sure what to tell anyone anymore, so I decided that I better put some time into figuring all this out. Even you have to admit that it's difficult to comfort people when you're not exactly sure of what to say. I mean, people's whole belief systems have come into question here. And not only that, but now the very values and principles of which we live by are being challenged. I've studied the Bible my entire life, and it's been my lifelong dream to live to see the coming. But I just never imagined that it would be anything like this. It's hard to believe that anyone could have predicted that it would all happen this way, but apparently some people knew otherwise. They'd still be here, wouldn't they? Yeah, I guess one of the things I've been wondering is how they even knew which people knew the truth and which ones didn't. I mean, can they read people's thoughts or what? I honestly don't know the answer to that, Michael. I haven't figured that out yet, and I'm not sure if I ever will. What I've managed to figure out so far is just from simple deductive reasoning. We know for sure that certain people were taken, or chosen, if you prefer, by them. How they chose who would be taken may have been completely random, or it may have been by design. I'm more inclined to think it was the latter because of what I'm about to tell you. If you consider the fact that they came and announced the second coming to the entire world and then took people with them, you then have to consider the fact that after the second coming, we have 7 years of tribulation. After that, supposedly, we will have heaven on earth. Think about what we know from the Bible for a minute. We know about the second coming, the 7 years of tribulation, and what will happen afterwards. Now, with everything that's happened, many people have been wondering if this can all still be true. Well, they told us that we lost some information somewhere down the line, or maybe just lost something when we translated it, but I am sure of several things, the first of which is that in 7 years, they will come back, and we will rejoice. I believe that somehow they knew who believed the truth and who didn't. How they knew that is not important. What's important is that we all find out the real truth before they come back. We all know what we heard and what we saw, and those things fit with certain parts of the Bible. The parts that don't fit start to make more sense if we change them to fit what we now know. I nodded. So you think that we may even get to see the people we lost again when they come back? Oh yes, I do believe that we will all be reunited. What I suggest you do, Michael, is go home and read your Bible, especially the book of Revelations. Replace your new knowledge with some of the flawed knowledge in the book, and I believe that you will come to the same conclusions that I have. I told him that I would do that, and then I stood up and extended my hand. Thank you for answering my question. Well, thank you for stopping in, said the pastor as he shook my hand. I hope to see you again soon. I walked out of the church that day, and I haven't been back since, but I have read the Bible many times over since then with Tanya. Maybe they'll be back in a year. Maybe they won't, but either way, it doesn't change what's happened. Nothing changes the fact that the world is never going to be the same, and nothing changes the fact that the world has been scarred forever by the coming. The day after it happened, the cable was still working, and Tanya and I decided to record the news on an old VHS tape. Once every week or two, we pull out the tape and watch it again. I don't know why we watch it. Maybe because we've seen all our tapes and DVDs a million times each, or maybe because we're hoping to see something new each time we watch it. But regardless of the reasoning, we still watch it all the time. I sat down to watch the tape again with Tanya, 6 years after the coming. I don't know how many times we've seen it, too many to count, I suppose, but each time it's just as shocking as it was that horrifying day 6 years ago. I push the tape into the VCR, turn on the TV, and sit down beside her. I take her hand in mine and kiss it lightly, like I used to do when we were courting. I do that a lot now. She really seems to like it, and I enjoy doing it. The tape starts off with a recording of an old Cincinnati Reds game that I recorded over. In my rush to record the news that day, I accidentally taped over my recording of Ken Griffey Jr.'s 600th career home run. But these things happen when you don't take the time to slow down and think. I'm not sure what I miss more, baseball or Griffey. I loved baseball, but Griffey had the sweetest swing of any hitter who ever lived, and it really is a shame that I recorded over a part of his and baseball's history. Excuse me. All of a sudden, hold on a second. All of a sudden, the game cuts out and the news starts. It still takes me by surprise, even though I know the exact second that the recording starts. Every time it happens, Tanya squeezes my hand, and I always give her a reassuring squeeze back. As you can see, the ship behind me seems to be randomly beaming people up into it. Reports are scattered at this time, but from what we've heard from NASA officials, there were at least 100 of these smaller ships that broke off from the mother ship and entered our atmosphere. It's still unclear why they are here or even why they are taking people, but rest assured that we will continue to broadcast for as long as we can. The government has attempted to hail the ships, but have received no response. We understand that counterstrikes launched by many different countries have been unsuccessful, and from what we've seen here today, there doesn't appear to be anything we can do to stop them. This is Casey Simpson reporting live from Central Park. The scene shifts then to the news studio where two men with grave faces sit in chairs facing the camera. I'm Tim McNeil for Total News Network. Joining me in the studio today is Sam Hawkins, noted physicist and self-proclaimed atheist. Sam, what's your take on what's going on here? Well, to be perfectly honest, Tim, I think we're seeing a total takeover here. They're probably here for our resources, and I believe that they're removing anyone they perceive as a threat. It seems to me that if they had a way of knowing who was a threat to them, then they would want to remove those people because they want as little resistance as possible while taking over the planet. Well, why do you think they're beaming people up instead of just killing them, Sam? I mean, why take them up in the ships when they can just as easily fire a laser or something to take us all out? I think perhaps they may be studying the people that they're taking. I would imagine that they're probably dissecting them to study our body chemistry, and that Sam never got to finish that thought because at that moment the screen was filled with a blinding light and he was gone. A stunned Tim McNeil sits there for a few moments, pale and unblinking, mouth hanging open before he finally speaks. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe that Sam has just been taken by the aliens. As you can see, he has just been beamed right out of the studio. Can we cut? Seriously, I need a minute. Can we just cut? The camera changes back to the live reporter from Central Park. Before she can say anything, the TV screen is filled with a blinding light. No matter how many times I look at it, I can never tell what's behind that light. I have to assume that what I heard next was heard by everyone watching TV or listening to the radio. Maybe they even broadcast the message from their ships as well, but one thing was for certain. Close to everyone who was left in the world heard the message that day. This is the rapture. Those who believed in us have been taken. Now that you know the truth, you have 7 years of tribulation before we come back for the rest. Despite what has happened here today, many will still refuse to believe, and that is their choice. But know this, we will return in 7 years. At that time, anyone who never believed before today will be taken. I am truly sorry for those of you who accepted falsehoods and passed down inaccurate knowledge from generation to generation, but you now have a chance to make things right. I urge you to spend the next 7 years thinking about how wrong you have truly been. When we return, we wish it to be a joyous occasion, so spend the next 7 years thinking, and upon our return, rejoice. The screen suddenly goes blank, and then cuts back into the Reds game. I can't believe aliens really exist, I told Tanya for what was probably the millionth time. I mean, all our lives we learned about the Bible and attended church on Sunday, and all this time God was just some alien that created us in his image. I know, sweetie, said Tanya. I know. Don't worry. It'll all be all right when they come back. She smiles at me lovingly, and I smile as she comes in for a kiss. You know what I think? She says as the Cincinnati crowd cheers on the tape. What's that? I ask her. The real truth of our existence is probably even more spectacular than anyone could ever imagine. You never know, I say as I kiss her again. I just hope we'll be here to find out what it is. Don't worry, she says as she hugs me and kisses the back of my head. We'll be here. She starts to rock me back and forth, and I hold on to her because I love her and never want to let her go. She says it one more time just to make sure that I heard her and that I believe her. We'll be here. It makes me feel better every time I hear her say it. And that's the end of my story. So, I don't know what you guys think of that, but hopefully you like it. There is one small mistake I made. Oh, nope, it's not a mistake. Okay, I was thinking this sentence, at that time, anyone who never believed before today will be taken, but no. So anyone who believes now, once the aliens show up, they'll be taken in 7 years. So, but anyone still denying it, it's 7 years. Okay. So anyway, the reason I wrote this story is because, well, most of you guys know I'm not religious. I'm basically an atheist. I don't like to call myself an atheist, but I would say atheist is probably the most accurate description. But I always thought it would be really cool if like we had just slightly misinterpreted the Bible, because it's been around for a long time. It's written by men. It's been translated into so many different languages. I was like, what if we lost something along the way? That was the kernel of the idea for this short story. So I started with that kernel of an idea, and I said, okay, so let's assume that we got this wrong. Then what would be a fun way to change it? Hopefully that's not insulting to people's religions or whatever. I had no intention of insulting people. I just thought it would be cool to what if. It's like a what if scenario. What if we made a huge mistake, and what if this is what the mistake was? So anyway, so I wrote the story 6 years ago. I was laid off from work. I've worked at the same place since 2005, but I got laid off for a year in 2012. During that time, I wrote a novel. When I finished the novel, it was really hard to get anybody to look at it or to even consider publishing it. They wanted other credits. They wanted some writing credits, any writing credits. So I started writing short stories in the hopes of getting one of them published. This is my favorite one. I like this one a lot. I don't know why. It just seems more, even though it's sci-fi, and I do write a lot of sci-fi and horror, and my main novel was a science fiction novel, and that's part of the reason I like this short story, even though it has nothing to do with the novel. I think I just really like it because it's human. I mean, to me, the short story is human, but anyway, maybe you guys will feel differently. I don't know, but I just wanted to put it out there. Maybe I'll put it up on like Medium or something like that. Maybe I'll see if I can publish it somewhere on the net for free. Just, have people read it if they want. But yeah, that's the end of my short story. So I would love it if you guys would give me some comments, some feedback. Let me know how bad it is, how good it is, what you thought of it, if you liked it. So yeah, let me know what you think. And I'll see you in the next video. You stay you, I'll stay me. Droogie4Ever. Thank you everybody so much for watching. Bye.